Oh, sorry. He put me in a little bit of a trance there, staring at me. Anyway, sorry. Welcome to another issue of Christmas, and this will be our ninth issue. And today's topic is going to be crime. The channel we're looking at today is not one I've done before. History Debunked. So I will subscribe now. And what I found when I've done a quick browse of his channel is he's obsessed with race. But this edition he's put out there is specifically about crime. But there will be issues mentioned that will tie to our race episode, actually. But we'll just have to deal with it. One thing I will say, though, is he is a very boring man. And he has a very, I will say, chilled out way of speaking. So that's why I put playback speed at 1.25 just for the purpose of this video. But let's see what our man has to say about ethnicity and offending in Britain.
Hello again. One great advantage of using the expression BAME, short for Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic, is that it allows people to hide what is really going on in many areas of modern Britain. If I say that BAME pupils at school are doing okay on average, this is reassuring. Because Chinese pupils do very well, and so do Indian ones, it helps conceal the fact that black pupils and those from Muslim backgrounds tend to do poorly. They balance.
This is an interesting thing he's actually mentioning here, where is Britain hiding its deficiencies in supporting certain races by grouping them in with other races that are doing quite well in comparison. So that's an interesting topic. It highlights some systematic issues, of course, that I've not really considered before. So good point, actually. I don't think he sees it as the same point I take it as, though.
Each other out if you lump them all together, and so everything looks as though it's running along all right, just as long as you consider all these people in the aggregate rather than as individual ethnicities or groups. The same thing happens when we look at the figures for those in prison or who have committed certain crimes.
Here we go.
If we say that BAME prisoners make up 26% of the population, then it sounds as though the 15 or 20% of the population who belong in this category are not really grossly overrepresented. That's why the government prefers to tell us about.
So I just thought that was interesting, but I just wanted to actually highlight the actual population of BAME in the UK. So 86% of the British population at the moment is in the white ethnic group, which would make BAME make up the remaining 14%. So that shows that the prison population is still overrepresented for BAME community. So if 26% of the population of the prison population is BAME compared to 16% of the actual population, 14%, sorry, then that's still an overrepresentation, isn't it? Sorry, I know what you're trying to get at, where you're going to try and say, we can say where he's going. He's going to say the majority of the BAME population of prisons are black. So should we not be highlighting that black people are causing the most crime rather than grouping them in with other races so we can say it's less of a problem? But that doesn't really work when the figures, even when you do that, still outlines a wider problem, which is that the BAME population is overrepresented in prisons. And I'm sure he has some theories why that is. Let's not assume his point of view.
BAME numbers when it comes to crime rather than the specific situation, which is that there are hardly any Chinese people in prison, or Sikhs, or Hindus. In fact, that quarter of all prisoners that the BAME figure refers to are almost entirely black people and Muslims. Put like that, it is clear that some ethnicities and members of a particular religion are far more likely to end up in prison than others. Is this because of racist or Islamophobic police and judges?
Yes. Yes. Easy answer to that question. Yes. There's a systematic problem that results in these people being arrested more. That's just true. I know where he's going to go with this. I'm sure you've all heard a racist rant in the same way before, and it always leads to the same way. And I'm going to let him hang himself first before I go into more detail on that. But the answer to that question, quite obviously, is yes. There is a racism aspect, a systematic racism aspect to why those two types of people that you've chosen to focus on for an arbitrary reason, Muslims and black people, are in prison. Yes.
Is it really the case that black people and Muslims go in for serious crimes more often than white British people? It's not hard to see what is going on if you look a little closely. In London, just under 30 teenagers have been murdered this year. Almost all by stabbing. They've all been black, other than one or two Asians or Eastern Europeans. None of those arrested or convicted for these deaths are of white British ethnicity. This is an African and Caribbean phenomenon. Young black...
black on black violence trope again. You all know the answer to this. The reason why black people are both the victims and perpetrators of knife crime in London specifically is because black people make up the majority of the impoverished population of London. Tying it to race, tying crime to race is always so fucking stupid, yet people continue to do it when we can more closely tie it to poverty. In majority white countries, like even more majority white than Britain, where, let's say, 96%, I'm just throwing that number out there, 96% of the population is white. When you take into account the people who do crimes in those cases, why is the crime not really, on average, more or less than in Britain? Because you still have poor people there. Being poor is more likely to lead to crime than a race would. It just so happens that if you take America especially, or Britain especially, and other countries as well, people of those races are more likely to be poor. That's what leads to the crime. In London, in knife crime, I know this is a trope that keeps getting drummed up by the right. When you have a bunch of poor people sharing small areas, because they are usually small areas with houses built one on top of the other essentially, and huge towers filled with all these poor people, yeah, there's going to be tension. There's more likely to be violence that breaks out, especially when you factor in gang violence, which once again, gangs is a symptom of poverty. You don't see many middle class people in gangs, do you? Got to ask yourself why that is. Is it a problem with the poor, or is it a problem with poverty? So whenever someone uses these arguments, the thing to break it down to is, how can we explain that? This idea that certain races are more likely to commit crimes and more likely to go to prison, or even if he was to agree with me and say, yeah, poor people are more likely to commit crimes, if we accept any of those situations, because those are true, what's the explanation? There's only two possible explanations. Either there's a genetic reason why certain people are predisposed to be more likely to be criminals, or there's a systematic reason. There's a reason in society why that's happening. If you think it's the former, it's something tied to genetics, you are just an out-of-date old racist. More likely a Nazi, because that's what the Nazis thought. Certain races were predisposed to certain things. Not just the Nazis, though. When we go back to Victorian times, people used to spout fucking stupid tales of people with big noses are more likely to be thieves, stuff like that. We know that's not true. We just do. We know that's not true. We know it's bollocks. So there's no genetic reason why a black person would be committing a crime instead of a white person. And even so, if we took a black person out of poverty and they became middle class or upper class, funnily enough, they're less likely to commit crime. Why? Because they're no longer in poverty. So is there a genetic reason why someone might be in poverty? That'll be the next question. No, obviously not. That'd be fucking stupid. So when you discount the genetic reasoning, what are we left with? There must be a societal reason. That is the basic concept that the right wing and racists like this cunt fail to grasp constantly. Everything you're saying, regardless if it's true or not, just points to a societal problem that you need to fix. But you will never fix it because you're too obsessed with race. You're too obsessed with saying, well, these races are doing it, it must be a problem with that race. It's not. It's a problem with your society. Fix that. Especially if you have a problem with it. If you have a problem with it, you need to actually fix the cause of it. The problem is, people like him don't actually have a problem with gang violence or crime, really, because ultimately they know they're not that affected by it. Their actual problem is with the existence of race groups in his country. He goes to sleep every night, fuming, having a hate wank, probably spitting out dust at this point, mind, about there being black people in a country that he feels should be just white. That's what it comes down to. Any way he can tie that race group to anything that makes him look bad, he will do. And that's what he's done in this video so far.
Black people are more ready to attack each other with knives and guns than other groups.
There you go.
We can, of course, debate whether these savage crimes are caused by poverty, academic underachievement, or racism in society. But that does not alter the fact that black people are implicated far more frequently in such attacks than anybody else.
Right wing does this all the time. They do this all the time. They'll say, well, we could debate about why, but is the important thing is not it's happening. Oh, it does. You can't deny the reality of it happening. It's the same vein as, oh, I'm not making any claims. I'm just asking questions. No, you know what you're doing. Stop thinking we're thick. We can see what you're doing. Saying, oh, we can debate it, but let's not. Let's just talk about how it actually is happening. All that does is lead to people blaming the races and actually doesn't fix the problem. If you're bringing this up, why are you bringing it up? What do you want to see happen next? The right don't ever go that step. They don't tell you what they want to happen next because they know that reveals something about them they don't want you to know. They know that reveals their racist intentions. And that's all this person is doing. Someone on the left said that you're racist just because you don't agree with them. Oh, fuck off, cunt.
This is so clearly the case that most of us on reading a newspaper report of a crime of violence can usually guess immediately what colour the skin of the person involved is likely to be, which is more than a little scary.
Does that not more tell you that we are all aware of the pre-existing biases in crime? That we can say, if I was to read a story about someone being arrested on drug charges, yeah, I'd assume the person in that story is going to be black because I know overwhelmingly white people are rarely arrested on those crimes. Oh, fucking hell. I'm going to assume if I read a story about, let's just say a violent crime. Someone tries to rob a shop and runs away and gets caught. I'm going to assume the person who did that crime is going to be someone in poverty because I'm aware someone in poverty is more likely to do those things because of the poverty. I'd be very surprised if it was a middle-class white male with 3 houses, for example. Yeah, because that's fucking stupid. Of course not. Those don't have the societal problems that lead to the crime. Yeah, what's your point? Well, I mean, more importantly, if there's ever a mass shooting, I can normally tell the race based on the wording. If it's a terrorist, violent terrorist, I'm going to assume Muslim or black. If it's mentally ill person has just shot a room full of people, I'm going to assume white getting a free pass. Or did it because it's mentally ill, not because they're violent? No, it can't be violent. Only black people and Muslims are violent, apparently. An idiot.
When you think about it. Many of us do this automatically when reading about incidents, and the fact that we are often 100% correct suggests that something other than racism is operating here. Let me talk about...
I feel this is more your hang up. I feel this is more a you thing. Mate, sorry. I don't think most people think this way. Awkward.
2 or 3 recent crimes which caught my eye and see what viewers make of them. A man has appeared at the Old Bailey in connection with the death of a custody officer in a court 6 years ago. A 22-year-old man called Humphrey Burke had been assessed as unpredictable and possibly mentally ill. As he was taken from the dock, he launched a terrible attack on one of the women escorting him, kicking her to death. He was then diagnosed as being a paranoid schizophrenic and taken off to the loony bin, where he has been for the last few years. Now he's a bit better, he's been convicted of manslaughter. Straight away, I knew when I read the case that the man is of Caribbean origin, possibly dual heritage, but certainly very dark-skinned. How do I know this?
Just FYI, it's not normal to guess the race of someone as you're reading a news story. It's not normal. The only reason to do it, there's 2 reasons to do it, really. One reason is you're a massive fucking racist, which is what you're covering, basically. That's you. The other reason is you're an anti-racist who might notice discrepancy in how stuff is reported and may like to highlight those things. So you may highlight, for example, I can tell by the wording of this that the person who did it is actually white because he's not being reported as a violent thug, but instead a mentally ill person who was said to be lovely by neighbours.
It's not hard. With very rare exceptions, 2 types of people are responsible for random and violent murders. Whether it's rampaging down the street, stabbing passers-by, or suddenly leaping at somebody and killing the person for no reason at all, these are crimes committed by either Muslims or black people. The Muslims are usually motivated by religious extremism, and the black people by paranoid schizophrenia. Caribbeans in Britain are 9 times as likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia as white people. I give links to both this specific crime and the research on Caribbeans and schizophrenia. This one was an easy one to guess. I've never really worried too much about people's motives. I know that if someone...
Hang on. You've got some evidence here. Oh, of course it's the fucking Daily Mail. Wow. I'll look at those later. You are a brave man for speaking about these facts. I don't know where the fuck he came to the conclusion that black people are all mentally ill. I don't. And this is just classic 60s racism. Like 1960s racism, where those black people, yeah, they're all going to attack you. Fucking mental. It's a complete dehumanization of certain races and religious groups that you don't see much in mainstream media these days, but once was dominated by this cunt and people like him. Just the pure xenophobia, and it is racism. I don't care if he thinks he's not racist, or if anyone watching this is like, oh, he's not racist, he's just speaking facts. No, he is a fucking racist. You're a racist too. You're both cunts. Absolute cunts. And there's no excuse for having this mindset where another human being, because of their skin colour, is predisposed to be more violent than someone of your skin colour. It's fucking stupid.
I read a report that somebody's been running along a street, stabbing passers-by at random. I am fairly sure this will either be a Caribbean schizophrenic or a Muslim gripped by religious mania. It's just how the world works. What about a knife attack in broad daylight in Rye Lane in the South London district of Peckham, resulting in the death of a young man?
Sounds like gang violence,
Peckham
yeah.
And stabbing. That has to be a black-on-black crime. A day or 2 later, a picture of the dead man is released along with his name. He can be seen in the thumbnail to this video. His name was Jabari Gooden. 3 people charged in connection with his death. They are Momadou Lamin Fall, Olusholu Eletu, and Elisha Anderson. Well, that wasn't hard to guess, was it?
He's a fucking buffoon and an absolute dickhead. That's what this boils down to. Like I say, it's just classic 1960s racism where he is absolutely scared of the world. He thinks every black person has the potential. Well, every human has the potential, let's just be fair. But he thinks black people in particular have the potential to just be mass murderers on the drop of a dime. And it's abhorrent. It's absolutely disgusting. I can't even make fun of it because it comes down to just being terrible human beings. And the best thing I can say, the only thing in support I can actually say to maybe give this video a little bit of an uplifting note, is that he'll be dead soon, and the world will be one less dickhead on the board, which is great. I don't know how old these people are, but hopefully they'll all be dead soon. I'm 25 years old, 26 next month. I am English American. My family is from Bedfordshire. I am incredibly proud of my heritage. English is my heritage. English is my first language. I was born and raised in southern Illinois. Despite my heritage, it is easier for a brown person to enter the United Kingdom than it would be for myself. What the fuck is this, mate? What the fuck? Big Techno. Fucking Big Techno. You're a fucking idiot, Big Techno. You've got a fucking Union Jack as your fucking thumbnail. What the fuck?
It is easy, sight unseen, to identify the perpetrator in stabbings of this kind, but some crimes are a little more tricky. What about a massive fraud connected with large amounts of money laundering, in which £10 million worth of government funding to help businesses during COVID was stolen by an elaborate fraud? Two things we can be sure of, and that is that this is not going to be either black people and almost certainly not white people either. My first guess was...
It's interesting that he said it's not going to be a black person. It's almost like he knows black people are less likely to be in this kind of position where they could have access to that money and to fraud in that way because they're in fucking poverty. Fucking hell. He's answering his own question.
Probably Pakistanis, but in fact it was a Lithuanian and a Russian. So, I mean, it was a toss-up whether I chose Pakistani Muslim or Eastern Europeans for this crime. The fascinating thing about this game of guessing the perpetrator is that the crimes I have described and almost all the similar ones are committed by people whose families don't have their roots in Britain. Put another way, without immigration and open borders, we would not have a murder wave in London.
What the fuck?
We have a money laundering problem. Fraud would be greatly reduced.
Yeah, because I've never heard of a white British person committing any crime. You're right, mate. Like, that's genius. Why didn't I think of it like that? And now that you mention it, no white British person who was born in Britain has ever committed a crime, ever. If I go to a website now, if I go to my local newspaper or whatever, I will not read a crime story from a white British person. It's always some kind of immigrant. Yeah, you're right. Oh, fucking well done, you absolute moron. What the fuck is this video? He's got a little bit of say, let's fucking hell.
Without those things too, as would violent robberies. Once upon a time, dozens of young people were not being knifed and killed each year in the capital, and there was no problem with money laundering either.
Yeah,
we have quite literally...
no problems with money laundering prior to... Fucking hell, he's an idiot. He's an absolute idiot. Like, how can you come to the conclusion? I kind of get the racism thing because you're scared of the world and stuff. Oh, there's certain races are doing more crime. I'm actually really scared of those races as a result. Yeah, you're being an idiot and you're being unreasonable, but I can actually see the logic there. But how do you wake up one morning and come to the conclusion that no crime happened prior to immigration? That's just fucking stupid. Now, once again, with the right wing, I've mentioned this before. Go back and watch this video from beginning to end. You can go find it on YouTube if you want, so I'm not talking over it, if it helps you concentrate on it. Notice how he never mentions a solution. He never says, this is a problem, this is how we can solve it, or here's a few ways we can solve it. He says multiple times he's not willing to go into the reasons for it. So the result is he's just going, well, there's this problem, and despite what caused it, it is a problem. And that's it. That's how he ends it. That's the whole thing. He puts a little bit in there about how he has this nice game where he guesses the races of criminals when he reads a news story. Fucking stupid, sociopathic. But the reason he doesn't have a solution, and he doesn't want to talk about a solution, he's not interested in talking about reasons why things happen, is because he only wants racial hatred. He only wants to attack different races and different religious groups. Because that's what he's motivated by. He's motivated by racism. That's the long and short of it. So when you right-wing people cry about being called racist, this is why. It's because you're only highlighting these things because you are being racist. If not, what's your solution? Why didn't he say there's a problem with black people more likely to commit crimes? This is what we should do about it. And this is where you might have to talk about the reasons it's caused. So it's inevitable. He's admitted it in this very video when he talked about the fraud. Definitely not being a black person. He's admitted that poverty is a cause. Why doesn't he want to solve poverty? Because that might mean giving black people a lifeline in which they could drag themselves out of poverty, essentially. And that would reduce crime. And that might mean he can't hate monger on black people anymore. That's not what he wants. He wants to continue hating black people, probably until, at best, they all get deported. At worst, genocide. I'm just going to go say it. Look at him. Look at him. Of course he wants genocide. Look at that twat. Fucking... Like I say, the best thing I can say in response to this video is he will be dead soon. And I'll piss on his grave if I knew where he was buried. What an absolute dog end.